Hello, I'm Adi Bolbother coming to you from the Mosaic Work Studio with a video from a new series focused on product. Being involved in building digital products for more than 12 years, we at Mosaic Works are always looking for ways to improve the way digital products are built. Back in 2017, we've decided to learn more from other product people, so we've created the Product Leaders Gathering. Practitioners on product, business, and technology passionate about building successful products are sharing strategies and techniques for product design, development, and validation. One of the speakers, Matteo Cavucci, talks about redesigning design. His talk, based on real-life experiences, explores how design is changing in the digital age beyond the initial delivery of specification and blueprints to an adaptive co-creation process that evolves literally over time. Thank you and enjoy the talk.
Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining me on the session. Well, today I have this hard job of representing design here in this conference, and well, I hope that everything will go fine. And since I really like to put myself in a very uncomfortable situation, I will start from here. I will start trying to find an answer to this question here. So, what is design? What we are talking about when we are talking about design? So I did some more work, and what I was finding is that our idea of design is strictly related to the industrial age. So all the innovation, all the technology advancement that we had during the past 2 centuries was in a certain sense a big driver for design, for the idea that we measured about design. It's because, when we invented the technology to build a car, we suddenly start needing a plan for making a car, and then something else, and then something else. And one of the things that was coming together with all this innovation, all this phenomena that was coming during the industrial age, was a different idea of organizing the work. So, this is a Gantt chart. This should be something very familiar to you, right? Something that you must know, because it's actually a tool, a very advanced innovation for the time, to organize people's work. And basically, the basic assumption here was that there are 2 kinds of people. People that decide what to do, and people that will do the job, right? So, there are people sitting somewhere, in the offices that will define how the product should look, should behave, what are the characteristics, and then other people that will work on the shop floor trying to put things together and making things that will be marketed on outside, let's say. And basically, a very simplistic view of the process of the production system of the industrial age, it looks pretty much like this. So we have shareholders that will engage conversation with management saying, okay, we need to do this, we need to build a chair, a table, a car, and you need to find a way so those things will happen. And then all those things was pushed to a designer, somebody sitting on the design table, and say, okay, making those things work, making this efficient, making those things a real product. And then all those things the design job was pushed to the production line, and then you're gonna have people that will start assembling things, making things, and distributing those things. And, it was a pretty successful model. Pretty much all the things that are in this room are made following this kind of production system. And all the physical products that has been made on the last 2 centuries was actually a great success case for this model. And if we are looking a little bit more about designers and what the design job was, we can say that there was this kind of idea. That designers worked a lot around how we should organize design, how the design looks like, what are the process between the design action. And basically what they find out is this, that first of all, you need to frame the problem. You need to understand what problem you want to solve. Then we need to ideate, we need to bring solutions on the table, and then prototype, making something that, we can observe, we can test, we can test materials, we can test how things behave in different situations and stuff like that. But, and this is a very important point, at a certain point, at a certain step, this process has to stop, because you have to send something to the other people in the shop floor, and they will start the production, and they will start the distribution. And this is a very interesting point, because it means that design, and designers in particular, they will put an extra care on scale and efficiency, of making something that is easy to produce, easy to replicate, and that will allow people to produce multiple things faster, better, and getting more margin, so cheaper in a sense. And if we are talking about quality in the industrial era was looking something like that you have the final product, right? The one that comes out from the assembly line, and you take that product and you serve the initial blueprint, the initial specification. Does it match? Yes, that's great quality. It doesn't? Well, that's a defect, right? We need to push back those things and let some kind of rework and let some kind of, target this problem. But this is a problem. If something was not described in the blueprint, and it wasn't in the final product, or was missing, well, huge problem here. And that's why you see that it's very important for a design phase be extra careful about what the final product will be. And you see those things happening in very successful products, like this one, pens. That's great pens, because they basically has been designed 100 years ago, and the same design, the same object didn't change so much through decades. We are still using the same idea, the same initial product that people thought years ago. So, if we see the initial question, what is design? We can see that it's definitely something correlated to the idea of planning, of making a plan, right? So, making something, designing something, so defining those things in a plan and let the other people to execute the plan. But a lot of things happened in the meanwhile from this initial idea of design. And what we see is definitely that we are living in a different world from the Henry Ford's world. That is a world full of digital products, right? So things that are made not by physical things, not by doing it on an assembly line environment, but in a digital space. And one of the main characteristics here is the fact that we are not good on predicting what's happening on this kind of market. This is something that should be very familiar to you, some kind of this quote shows the fact that it's very hard to predict what's going on the digital space. And that's a very interesting point, right? So, how can we increase our success in such a chaotic market? And I will go through this question, I will try to bring in my point here, but before getting more into details, let's get to know a little bit each other. So, this is me. My name is Matteo Cavucci. I'm Italian, but I'm living in Berlin. And, I'm a consultant, but I'm not here to sell anything. For this company called ThoughtWorks. So, ThoughtWorks is very famous if you know something about Agile. So, two of the original Agile Manifesto authors are working for ThoughtWorks. And basically, we are very good at making technology products, and at the same time, trying to have a positive impact in the global south, in the global north, on topics around privacy and accessibility and inclusion and other things. Well, what about you? How many of you are working with digital products? Well, the vast majority. I'm in the right place. And how many of you are a product person, working with product, define themselves like product management, product owner, product managers? Okay. And how many of you have made at least a sketch of the product? Well, congratulations, you are designers. So, we said, we are trying to design in a digital era, which is different from designing in the industrial era. Why? Because, as we said before, digital products are different. It's a completely different thing. Thinking about solving users' problem through software, to creating something that is immaterial, than making a chair, making a table, making a car. But we are still at the beginning of this paradigm shift. We still have mental models that reflect this industrial way of producing things. For example, how many of you have described the software using like a house metaphor? Like, okay, this is going to be the kitchen, then we're gonna have another room for, I don't know, the toilet, and then this is going to be the window, and then this is the kitchen sink, and so on and so on. We still have this mental model of making things in concrete, very solid way, right? So assembling things, asking people for the design, then assembling the design, and so on and so on. But we said before, software is different. Software is definitely a different thing. Why? First point here, because software is easy to change. Software is something that adapts very quickly. I don't know if you are thinking about your legacy application, and you probably are not agree with me, but I have to guarantee that software has less friction if you want to change a software product. If you want to iterate a software product, well, this is easier. Because, what's happening if you're putting something out as a software product and as a physical product, and those things have error, mistakes? Well, you need to produce a fix. And that's a fix in the physical world. Costs a lot of money. Crazy. And this is a fix on the digital world. So very easy, fast. Nobody basically will get the fact that the problem is solved. Quick iteration, quick feedback. A mess. Nobody wants to be there. Another thing that makes software different is this. Is the fact that we are marketing, we are distributing software in a very different market, in a very different environment, in a place where it's very hard to predict what's going on, what is successful and what is not. And you have those big companies, you have this example of big companies that was leading their own market, and they crushed it in years, just disrupted by a bunch of people, a bunch of youngsters doing experiments in their own garage, right? This is the classic Silicon Valley legend. But this is something true, right? This is something real. This is something that happened. And this is a market where disruption and innovation is a new thing. And I think about something similar, something easier. For example, how the world has changed when we introduced monthly plans, subscriptions, instead of selling licenses. That was a big shift, because it means that you can change your provider next month, instead of paying a lot of money in advance. And so that's the condition that we are working at. This is the environment, that's the place, those are the challenges. And how can we address those challenges? Well, instead of optimizing for scale and efficiency, as we said before, we should optimize for resilience. So our capacity to adapt and adaptability. So change is the key. But I have to be honest here with you, because I said before, I'm a consultant. This means that I'm going to visit a lot of places, a lot of clients, and what I see from those clients, from the way they're organizing the product process, is something like this, right? So they said, okay, we are doing Agile, we are doing Scrum, but if you see in detail, you have something like this. You have like shareholders sitting there saying, oh, we need to make the next feature. And then you have product owners, product managers, people like you that have to solve the maze of organizing all those things and making those things clear, because a designer will make the design artifact. What is the design artifact? Well, it could be a high-fidelity mock-up, it could be a wireframe, but it could be also a service design blueprint. Something that other people will implement. Well, sometimes we have tests here. I'm going to talk about testing. But you see here that we have dev team, and those people will say, yes, we are doing daily stand-ups, and this is the Scrum part. And then, but after this, after they make something, after they made the actual product, the product will be pushed in the product environment and will be distributed to users. And you see here, the first thing that you can observe is the distance between the original idea and the actual people that will use the idea. And this leads to a very interesting thing, to a very interesting analysis, something that you can perform easily also at home, let's say. The cost per change analysis. That if you find something that is wrong, doesn't make any help, doesn't help anybody in the wide world, well, this happens here when actually the cost to change the product, to change the software, have an exponential cost. And then you need to call back the QA guy, and the QA guy will make a phone call to re-engage the coding people, and then the design have to rework. And those probably are guys that are working in another section, in another feature, in another part of the organization. And they have to stop and start working on a possible iteration, if this is something that really varies. Otherwise, you will keep those things going, right? You don't care. If the feature doesn't help anyone, I don't care. And this is actually a juicy part, because many people think, say this, and say, oh yes, we know how to solve it, right? It's just add more research, right? Let's perform a lot of research upfront, right? Let's engage users, let's call users here in the lab, and let's show them our fantastic ideas, let's make, role play, and we're gonna get a lot of knowledge, and we're gonna get a lot of things, and we're gonna be sure that the product will success. Well, I have to put a little bit of skepticism here, because I see a lot of, that our industry really cares about user research, push very hard to get more research and more research. But one thing is that research is hard. And even scientists that are performing behavioral experiments, like psychologists, well, they have less of 50% chances of making something that can be reproduced. So something that has a scientific, let's say, relevance. Well, this is great. This is something interesting, because it means that research can give us the direction, but it's not the place to look if we are looking for truth, if we are looking for something that has solid basis. And I mean, those are scientists. I mean, I'm not talking about people that are actually out from a design school and they read a couple of articles on Norman Nielsen website and they are performing experiments. Those are people that committed their entire life to science, and they are still making this number, this percentage of errors, this percentage of things. Why those things happen? Because there are a lot of things that can go wrong with research. First of all, selection biases, or inconsistent measurement, poor experimental control, demand characteristic, inadequate consideration of statistical power. We talked before was great about talking about statistics. But probably my favorite one, my personal favorite one, is the last one, where people are cherry picking only the things that they like, right? That they want to confirm their own initial idea, their own initial biases. But why we are looking at research more and more to get, let's say, more, to be more confident about our product? That's because a lot of things that happen in design, I would say more than 90%, happens before the launch. We still have this idea of designing everything before launching something, because then the launch will start, and then designers, product people will shift to another function, right? So a lot of things are focused before shipping something out. And I mean, that's a big problem, because it's very hard to predict how user will interact with a new feature, with a new idea. And, it's impossible to capture user needs until they use the actual product that we made. So it's very, very hard. I would say it's impossible to see how people will use in their context the thing that we thought will solve their problems. Well, that's because, a lot of things happens when you get the knowledge that something is possible, right? That you get the idea that you can do something new with your phone, with your computer, with your car, with whatever. well, let me give you an example. This guy give you an example.
I was on an airplane and there was internet, high-speed internet on the airplane. That's
Yes.
the newest thing that I know exists. And I'm sitting on the plane, they go, open up your laptop, you can go on the internet. And it's fast, and I'm watching YouTube clips. I'm in an airplane. And then it breaks down. And they apologize, the internet's not working. The guy next to me goes, this is bull. Like, how quickly the world owes him something he knew existed only 10 seconds ago.
That was Louis C.K., the great comedian. And the thing he was explaining is this, that when we push something out in the world changes. And the expectations from people changes accordingly. So it's very hard to have an idea of what's going to happen before creating something. And that's happens basically because we are dealing with something that that's a buzzword, that's something that people likes to use, but we are actually in front of a complex adaptive system, a moving target, something that is extremely hard to capture and to understand. It's a kind of blob, right? It's something that is very hard to see, to have a proper idea of what's going on. And that's why I would say we need to change the way we are designing. We are conducting our design, our product design process. And if you are facing a complex adaptive system, well, let's look a little bit about people that made some kind of studies, some kind of experiences around complexity. And I started looking at people working around this topic, the agile software development. So, as you may know, people at the end of the 90s was very sick about the way software was made. And they tried to have a different way. They tried to experiment and say, how can we make software better? How can we work together so software will be more efficient and we're going to make less waste in the process, in our process? And, well, one thing that I really loved, since my first day I was in touch with the agile software development principles, is the fact that those people think that we don't have any control on our environment. So we don't know what's happening. We don't know what's actually out of the building, what our user needs. And to get there, to get something that is valuable, we need to proceed following this principle. Inspect and adapt. And you see Agile using those kind of practices pretty much everywhere. You probably, I don't know if you had the chance of observing a sprint show-off, let's say. So when the sprint is over and developers have to show what they made. And this is not a moment that is useful for check if developers did everything it was they committed at the beginning of the sprint. But this is a moment where they have the chance to see if the solution that they made actually targets the initial needs that was imagined, that was on the table. So this is a check moment to see if they was really able to target user needs. But since they didn't have access to users, they had some kind of proxy, like user proxy, this idea of having a proxy for the user. And this idea comes from the fact that when Agile was starting to become popular, so at the beginning of the 90s, software was something that we used to distribute using CDs and floppy disk. It was something that needed to happen in a room, and then users was far away from that room. But something has changed in the last, let's say, 10 years. We start to see companies that produces the software, designing the software, and operates the software. You build it, you run it. That's the mantra from this, let's say, approach called DevOps. How many of you heard about DevOps? Yeah, go DevOps. And what is DevOps? Well, DevOps is not developer's operation. It's not about how quickly we can send software out or how few operation we have to send a patch to the software that we made. DevOps is about feedback. So it's about catching things when they are in the wild. So setting alarms and setting, let's say, listeners. So things that will happen in the world will produce a message, and we can release patches, and we can target things, and we can recover faster because we are keeping an eye on this. So we are creating a feedback system. And one of the principles, one of the columns behind the DevOps architecture is this, is that we have a team that is in charge to run the software from inception to retirement. So covering all the span of a software lifecycle. And those are very interesting ideas, right? Those are great things, like building for feedback, creating teams that are responsible for features. And this leads me to think, what if you're trying to apply those things, those principles, to design? Here it is, DESIGNOPS. So I didn't invent the word, but that's a very interesting field, because instead of designing once forever, we can start thinking about design as a continuous design, as a conversation between the company and the people that use it. We've seen a lot of examples today about companies trying to make experiments, listening to how those experiments react and act accordingly. This is a conversation. You see, it's not a verbal conversation, yes, of course, but it's a kind of exchange. And you see the shift here from designing for gut feeling, designing for for what you think is true, shifting more in a place where fast feedback is the most important thing. Learning fast, getting things, check how the people react, how people respond. And I mean, in my company we have this thing that we call hypothesis-driven development, right? So we tend to not use a specification that we're trying to describe in details the products that we're going to build, but we try to formulate things to do in a way like this. I will give you an example quickly. Like, we believe that making the offer teaser more prominent will result in an increased number of bookings for tonight, and we know that we have succeeded when the offer conversions increased by 10%. That's the goal of our team. Finding something, creating those kind of experiments, and check if the success criteria matches the one they can observe after they made something. And yeah, that's a typical goal that we have, that we are trying to advocate. So having customer journey at the top, production, product, hypothesis, design experiments. Those are design experiments. Then user story mapping, and then gathering and make data visible for everyone. So you see teams, you see people, you see product teams be able to run just the product and at the same time design for it. So those are the same people that develops and design things, and they will listen for data. Well, we heard a lot of people today talking about experiments, right? And I will add just one thing. I will add the fact that making an experiment is easy. But the hard part is making those experiments happen one after the other, and making those things to make those experiments one after the other. And you see it because, and you need it, because you need some kind of optionality. You need to run multiple experiments at a time, and you need to test those things one against the other, and you need to get the value that comes from the knowledge, from the learnings that happens in different positions and different things. But if you deal with software, you know that this is extremely dangerous, because this could be a mess. So your software code base, your product, it could be a Frankenstein in no time. And that's why you need two things. You need to automate the process, and at the same time act on the way we are organizing the work. I will try to be quick here because I don't have so much time in a minute, but if you have questions probably we can catch up later. Automate design decisions. Try to make trivial design decisions automated. Why? Because we need to minimize the effort of creating experiments in order to maximize the feedback, the learning that we can get. You probably heard a lot of designers, a lot of people talking about design systems. Yes, that's great. Design system is a way of automating the design process, because we don't have to think about, I don't know, the distance that we need for, I don't know, a header. We don't need to think about how a form should look like, a button should, or what is the spec for a button. Those things will be automated. We need to automate those things in order to let everybody to make informed design decisions, to let people, and when I say people, I say designers as well as non-designers, as well as product people, as well as marketing guys, be able to create high-quality design experiments. And instead of giving them maps, instead of giving them specs that represent the design, like mock-ups or whatever, we need, as a designers, to think about compasses, things that will lead them through their own journeys and will help them to find their own way. So basically I'm talking about creating a design infrastructure that will allow people to create design in their own environments where they have a lot of knowledge around it. But it's not just creating things, it's also listening, we said. It's a conversation, it's a two-way conversation. So we need to create design infrastructure to assemble experiments and creating experiments and make those experiments easier. But at the same time, we need to create an infrastructure for listening, to gather data, to gather things back. So it's not just about building, but it's also about observing. It's also about engaging conversation with data analysts and data scientists to create the best way we can observe users when they are, in their context, dealing with our applications, our features. And so, what I imagine is something like this. We can call it design as a service architecture. So we're going to have a product team. That is me. This is what you mean with product team. It's like cross-functional, hand-to-end value creation. So from inception to retirement, they are domain experts. They are cultivating and they are learning. So it means that they will retain a lot of knowledge about the specific vertical, the specific area of the product. And they may or may not include a designer. Depends from the task, depends from their organization. I don't care at this point. Of course, we have a strategy, we have a global strategy, we have a vision, we have something that we have to follow. And we're going to have a conversation between the product team and the strategy team, the strategy people that will define this. But at the same time, we don't have to forget that their main goal, their main job, is creating this feedback loop, which is basically pushing things on production and observe how the experiments are creating value together with people. How people are using the new features, the new things, to co-create value, to enable some kind of solution. And then we're going to have feedback that comes back to the product team. So they will increment the knowledge, and at the same time they could have another conversation with the strategy. But to allow this, we need support. We need somebody that will sustain this kind of way. Because I said before, without control, those things can go wrong in a very quick way. And that's why we need a dedicated team. We need dedicated people that will be, I will call the DESIGNOPS team, that will provide design artifacts, design things, so people on the product team can build their own design. So they don't have a dependency, but they have a sort of shop where they can pull things, and they can put those things, we can use their design, let's say, alphabet, their design vocabulary, to create design artifacts. Who are those people? Yes, of course, we can include designers, but we can also include developers, we can include tech, because sometimes it's about creating tech products. And of course, we need to include data analysts. And what is their job? Provide a design infrastructure, but also observe how those things are used. So they are, let's say, a product team inside the company that creates a sort of API, a sort of interface for other teams, so other teams will consume those resources to create their own design decisions, because they're already making design decisions. So teams product people, I said before, everybody is a designer in a certain sense, because everybody will make design decisions. What we can make here is providing them tools so their design decisions will be made, let's say, in a more, how can I say, expert way, so in a more safe way, because it's also about reducing the risk. And you see here that things are becoming very complex, because it's not about creating a process, but it's about trying to address the problem about how people are interacting each other. So when we are trying to make a library, a centralized library, the main problem is not technology. We are not talking about a technology problem here. We are talking about a human problem. It's about how those people interact. That leads us to a very interesting point, which is governance. How those things, what are the rules of the games? How those people can interact each other? What could be a model so those things works? This is a very interesting part, and this is probably where our efforts should converge. And I believe that this is actually probably the most challenging thing for a company in the next years. And you will probably find those things at your environment as well, and see those kind of challenges arising in your environment as well. But since I'm already out of time, I would say that this is time for a recap. So, we said before, design as a planning paradigm is what we inherited from the industrial era. But we are dealing with a market that is very uncertain. So we have a lot of uncertainty in our market. And we can use software, the software characteristic, the resilience of software to target those things. Current design practices have a lot in common on the way we are designing for industrial products. And this is something that doesn't work so well. We could look at Agile and DevOps to get inspiration about a new idea of design. We call it DESIGNOPS. And what I mean with DESIGNOPS, I can summarize those things in 3 points. Design for learning, because we are in front of complex adaptive systems, and we need to create things so we'll increase the learning, we'll increase the knowledge that we have about the small portion of the domain. To do this, in order to do this, we need to enable other people to design. So other people will be able to create design and make those things high quality and quick. So this cycle, the feedback loop, could be quicker and faster. And the most important point here is connect design thinking with operation, or where the software is actually operated. That sometimes is people, right? We need to connect people that think about how to make products with people that are actually in charge of, managing the software in the wild. And that's a great shift, because it doesn't mean that we need to stop design when the product is launched, but this is a constant conversation with people. And that was all for me. If you have questions, you will be more than welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matteo. So here is my proposal. We can have a quick question before going to lunch, and then we have open space, so you have plenty of time to catch up with Matteo. Okay, so I saw there. Okay.
Hey Matteo, thanks for the inspiration.
Thank you.
So my question is about, have you seen any DESIGNOPS companies, or large companies that have already embraced DESIGNOPS? And if so, maybe you could share some insights about how they manage the change towards this type of an organization. Thanks.
Yes. So, probably the most advanced company for DESIGNOPS paradigm is Airbnb. Airbnb have a dedicated team that's called DESIGNOPS, and they are actively producing tools that will be consumed by internal teams to address design problems. And that's a great paradigm. So if you look on Google for DESIGNOPS and Airbnb, you will get a lot of things. They made great products, and they are also releasing as an open source project. They are great. But there are a lot of different companies. For example, I know pretty well the things that they are making in Mozilla. Mozilla is also acting in this way because they have a very important problem, which is coordinating design efforts coming from the community. So they have an open source community, right? And they need some kind of things that will allow people to create experiments quickly, and they can actually coordinate those efforts happening in different places, in different situations, and different things. How to introduce this model? Well, normally it's all about problems. So see what are the issues, see what are the things that makes people struggle with design. And normally what I observed, we can summarize in 2 points. One is, let's say, achieving consistency, that I would call coherency through the design. So they have like a sort of balkanized design, because every team tends to make their own decisions, and it's going to be a mess after a while. So they have this huge problem, and we can try to give them a solution, trying to experiment with automation and organization. And another point here would be like trying to make a sense from how to organize design at scale. So normally we are talking about big companies, we are talking about a large number of people that have to coordinate their work, and sometimes they are just doing a lot of waste. How to reduce this waste? This is an interesting problem, and this is a model that definitely could help.
This was Matteo Cavucci's talk at the first edition of Product Leaders Summit back in 2017. We're coming back next week with another video. Until then, don't forget to think, design, and work smart.